The hearing aid's like a cat in my ear.
Can we? One day we need to do a Truth Wanted ASMR, and like the entire episode, we're just gonna whisper like this.
We're just gonna do this.
Yeah,
this will relax you. Don't worry.
They're gonna kill me in the audio engineering room over here if I keep doing that, probably. But yeah,
more than likely. I'll wake up tomorrow and Dan's head will be on my doorstep, and I'll just be like, "Oh, is that a message? Is that a warning?"
Right. So Charles, let's get to something with this conversation here. When you're doing these rituals, how confident are you in the actual objects itself are doing something for you, or it's just the act of the rituals? Like which way do you lean on either one of those?
I would say it's what I use in the rituals, and it just kind of makes you more of a calm, kind of like you reached a goal.
Okay. So kind of confused there. Is the act of reaching the goal and the doing kind of more important? Because it sounded like at the end there, you said at first it was the objects, but then at the end there, it kind of sounds like the doing part.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of everything.
Okay. What do you think, Suris?
I still hold that because I've researched this topic and I've talked with people who both believe in it or used to believe in it or never believed in it at all. And the consensus seems to be that the only people who ever are actually affected by the individual, like the individual rocks and what they're supposed to do, are the people who already believe in what that rock is supposed to do or have been told what that rock is supposed to do in some capacity. My suggestion would be and I know that this feels a little manipulative, but to figure out which one it is, this is one thing that you can do in science. And I don't advocate for scientism. I don't think science is the answer to literally everything. But one thing you can do is kind of apply the scientific method a little bit and take a few people, tell them that the rocks that you're using do different things.
Yes.
Using different rocks. Like you tell them that, rock 1, 2, and 3 do X, Y, and Z, and you maintain that. The only difference is rock 1, 2, and 3 would be different rocks. Some that you don't think have any different type of power, some that have a power completely opposite of what you have been told or think that a particular rock does. And if you get a marginally consistent feeling of euphoria or calmness from all the people that you do this to, that kind of can cement at that point that it's not the rocks that are doing it. The rocks themselves aren't actually causing any vibrations in the body that are doing what you think they're doing. It's just the act of doing this that is calming, or the act of doing this that is doing it.
I think that's an excellent test. I'm reminded of a BuzzFeed video I saw where they were attempting to demonstrate some things with astrology, and they got an astrologer to come and talk to, I can't remember how many people, 10 different people or so, and kind of check to see how many of the beliefs, so the idea was he didn't know what any of the people's signs were, their star signs were, and he had to guess based on some of the information given to him about each individual person what their star signs were. And I think they were only able to get like 2 or 3 right or so. With the amount of guesswork there, and there may have been some tricks and stuff that they've done to kind of tease out some information. I would say to me that's not as impressive if it's only a few out of the 10. Like if you're studying this stuff this whole time and you're really good at it, you should be able to like pick it out, at least most people, most of the time. But what do you think about this test, Charles? Do you think this is a good idea?
Well, I'm not sure. Actually, I'm a solitary witch, so I only do it by myself. So I wouldn't even know who to test it on.
Fair, although that does sound almost like an unfortunate way to create an echo chamber for yourself. Is not being able to practice.
Oh, to be practice by myself. Well, I don't have nobody telling me what to do and how to do it. I mean, somebody kind of like showed me like this is how you start. This is if you do this, A equals B, and then you get it ends up giving you the final product of what you're going for.
Well, that's like the first caller that we had. one of the issues they had with being in a group of people who followed a lot of the same rituals was that some people in the group wanted them to believe or wanted them to practice in a very particular way that they did not. So I can understand that side of not wanting to have.
Yeah, when you're solitary, you have the freedom, and that's what a lot of solitary witches or practitioners like about it.
Yeah, well, Charles, I know you're a solitary witch, but if you have any other witches that you know, you need to get them to call into the show, because we haven't talked a whole lot about witchcraft. We've kind of dabbled in it some more, but I want to get more into the nitty-gritty of what some witches do and how we can kind of talk about that more and see.
Oh, yeah, there's so many of them. There's Wicca, Wiccans, there's regular pagan witches, and there's North pagan witches, Celtic. I mean, the list, some that practice Egyptian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the list is quite extensive.
It's a pretty big list of practices.
So I want to kind of wrap up this call here, but I want to ask this kind of final question to you before we let you go here. And if you have a response to it and you can tell us here, great. But if not, like something maybe to take home with you is, do you think that these beliefs or these practices and their claimed effects are verifiable in some way? And do you think that the way that Suris has outlined is a good way to verify it? Like yes or no to that. And if it's like a no, then like what is a better way to verify that these practices are working the way that they're intended or are essentially true, right? Or if there's some sort of other explanation for the effects that you're seeing for these practices?
That's a good question. I pretty much, when I do my practices, I feel not really a connection with the gods, but it's more of a connection to the ancestors, and I get an enjoyment out of that. So I think that's the main thing why I do it.
Let me ask you a harder question then. I know I said that was the final question. Let me ask you a tough question.
Okay.
Are feelings a reliable way of telling us about truth?
Well, no, you can feel something, but of course you want to do research and make sure what you're doing is the right way, and anything you can always add to it, because knowledge is wisdom, and wisdom is always a good thing.
Because the reason why I asked that, right? Like I'm sure you know, most people are pretty aware of like the placebo effect, right? This idea of things can give us effects that they don't actually do through their own, through the property of the thing itself, but it's just ourselves kind of projecting the effects of the object, right? Like if you're taking sugar pills and you think that they're helping you with something else, but really it's just sugar pills and they're not doing it. It's kind of like we were talking about earlier, it's the act. How can we be sure that what you're doing with your practice is not one of these cases? How can we be sure that this isn't some sort of placebo?
That's actually a good question, because dang it, what was I going to say?
Oh, Charles, you there?
Not sure how to answer that.
Great. Well,
kind of drew a blank on that one.
Hey,
that might be one of the things, and this is not us trying to be antagonistic. Obviously, like my co-host is a pagan. I have no want to be antagonistic in this sense, because it doesn't sound like what you're doing, even if it is placebo, it doesn't sound like what you're doing is harming anybody. It's just a ritual that you practice for yourself.
I don't think it's a placebo. I mean, it's more of like because more than anything in my rituals, it's more meditation. So it's not. It's not in any shape or form, trying to tell somebody, hey, this is what you should believe in, or how you should practice, or how you should live. It's just say, hey, if you're stressed out or life is getting you down, here's a good way to find, a common way and a good way to find balance in your life.
Well, here's an interesting thing that you mentioned, Charles, because you talked about meditation, and I think meditation totally works. I think that there are scientific studies that totally demonstrate meditation, but the mechanisms by which how meditation works, I would disagree with some people. For example, Hindus and Buddhists, and it depends on the practice, because there's totally different sects. But there are some people in sects within those various religions who think that there are spiritual applications going on when you do meditation, that there is something metaphysical happening when you're performing these acts. And I think we can at least demonstrate to some level that meditation is something that we're producing ourselves as kind of a byproduct of our own efforts, and not necessarily something spiritual, or not necessarily something metaphysical or anything in those realms. And you're talking about this thing that you do, your own practice, in kind of the same language that we're talking about meditation, where I think that there can be a distinction made, as I don't necessarily believe that when I do meditation, and I have done it myself, that anything spiritual necessarily is going on. That there's...
Well, you could meditate and not really look at it as spiritual, or you can look at it as being spiritual. But like you being atheist, you can just be like, hey, I just want to get a calm, cool state of balance in my life, and that's why I meditate.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yes.
Because I have friends that are atheists, and they don't believe in the gods, or there's atheist pagans, and then I'm just like, okay, it's like...
Absolutely. But do you agree with me?
The cool thing about it is we all just talk about it, and then we just figure out what can we do to help one another.
But do you agree with me, Charles, when I say that finding balance and saying that this is the reason why I do this is different from me saying, oh, the reason why I do this is because these crystals and herbs actually have a power to them? Do you see that there's kind of a difference between these two?
Well, the herbs and minerals, I usually take those like vitamins and stuff, and they actually do help because I got good blood, good iron. Other than my disability, everything, internally is really good. So that part works.
I actually did a video on supplements and herbs as well. That was actually this week. There is, like, for me, I've had to take supplements before because I had a vitamin D deficiency for a decent bit. Probably still do, but I haven't gotten it checked out in a while. So there is at least in the supplement category, in the herb category, there are some applications.
Got something. I always got to watch, the acidity in my body, because that affects me.
Yep.
Well, anyway, I think we really should move on now, because I said that there was a final question, and I ended up asking like 5 more. But I'm glad that we did, because we got to talk.
Shame on you, Dan.
I know, right? But we got to talk a little bit more about this subject. So, Charles, I hope that you got something from this conversation. I know that I certainly did. And
I quite enjoyed it, Dan. Y'all are awesome. I enjoy your show too.
That's awesome. I'm so glad. I want to hear back from you. If you want to talk, like Suris mentioned his test, if you want to try something like that, or if you had more comments about that, you can definitely email me. My email for everyone out there is truth@atheist-community.org, and that's for all kinds of inquiries about the show or whatever else. Or if you want to call back sometime, that's cool too. But I'd love to hear a follow-up on this conversation to see if your beliefs have changed at all, if this conversation's done anything for you, or if you just feel the same way that you feel before, and that life's still good and you're still doing your rituals. What do you think, Charles?
Okay, sounds good. Or we can always talk about near-death experiences, because I had one of those, and I kind of would love to hear another person's point of view.
I'd like to hear that sometime. We've talked a little bit about near-death experiences on the show before, but more stories are welcome. But we're going to have to move on now. But thanks, Charles, for calling. This was really fun.
All right. I'll talk to y'all later.
All right.
See you, Charles.
Yes, Suris, I keep going to you because it's like, oh yeah, Suris does a video on this. Yeah, Suris has talked about this before. He can talk about this. You've talked about it all, man.
I've tried to